I'm here with Axel van Trotsenburg, the World Bank's Senior Managing Director for Development Policy and Partnerships. That is the highest ranking staff member and informal number 2 at the bank. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, and we're wrapping up the annual meetings and do a little bit of a review. I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what are the main takeaways from this week, which has been quite intense, I'm sure, and interesting?
Well, I think the main takeaway is that we decided to focus on the jobs agenda, where whatever we touch is leading to the jobs agenda, largely because out of a serious concern that not enough jobs are being created in the developing world. We are using this famous 1.2 billion people will enter the jobs market over the next 10 years, but it's likely that only a third will find permanent jobs. And so there is a gap now, whether that is exactly 800 million or 750, but the dimensions are clear, the challenges are enormous, and we need to really focus on this. This is related to whatever we do, from the skilling to the economic growth to the regulatory, you name it. And I think there was a good reception from the entire membership. I would say actually this is a shared concern in middle-income countries, in low-income countries, but also even by OECD governments, that they see this is an important topic. So the main takeaway is actually strong support for this agenda. Mm-hmm. Also a clear call that we will need to work differently. Mm-hmm. And that means that we have to really tap into the private sector, because most of the jobs will be created by the private sector. And so this is also a call to the World Bank Group to see how we can intensify, if you say, that relationship, so that ultimately the investments are taking place and the jobs being created.
Now, the World Bank has, of course, always been active on private sector development. So could you maybe explain a little bit what's new and what areas this agenda is focused on and how you will implement it?
Well, I think that indeed the World Bank Group has a unique value proposition in the sense that we have two strong private sector arms, the IFC and MIGA, and then two strong public sector arms, IBRD, IDA. I think that the collaboration between the two have really intensified over the last couple of years, and that is also for the improvement. So that is not only in terms of what we are doing together in terms of financial support or in terms of coordination, but particularly also on the ground. So we're moving to one single representation, no longer an IFC representative and a World Bank, but there is one package that we are offering countries. I think it's very important, because then in that sense we assure that both private sector and the public sector considerations are always at front and center with governments. I think then we have also had the private sector investment lab, where we have had the benefit of bankers, of investors to give the feedback. And here we have been changing. For example, there is a lot of discussions about guarantees, for example. Mm-hmm. And let's be self-critical, they were often very scattered, ones in the public sector and the private sector. This is now all consolidated in MIGA. And actually it is showing promising results. Last year we had 30% growth rate already in it. We are aiming to get $20 billion in guarantees by 2030. Our expectation now is that we will achieve that much quicker. So there are things that we are doing, and then a much more systematic outreach with also the private sector to see what are some of the issues that hold them back. Clearly, risk is always a prominent topic, but also exchange rate issues, etc. So I think that is something we need to tackle, and I think that is a little bit of a difference from the past, how we work across this World Bank Group, but also particularly with the private sector outside of the World Bank Group.
I mean, not to dwell too much into internal management of the bank, but you also announced a restructuring, and I guess that's related to what you said, right? That you will try to bundle all the counterpart kind of
I think
with one?
Having been there at the bank, restructuring sounds like we are moving in enormous boxes, and so that's not the case. What we want to do is also to gain efficiency gains. That means that you bring, for example, the treasuries of the different entities together. Similar, for example, in the knowledge bank that I've been overseeing is how can we actually be much more systematic and integrate the knowledge of the private sector arms of IFC MIGA, as well as our research outfit, the Development Economics Vice Presidency, with operations and our vertical vice presidency. So it is really to see how we can actually be more systematic and also see that in that sense we are covering both public and private sector aspects in our analytical work much more systematically. And I do not see this as a big restructuring, but certainly in a realignment.
Right. Now, let me ask you something slightly different. Zambia's president, he said something remarkable the other day in the Financial Times. He said cuts to international aid were long overdue, and reductions by USAID and other donors offered his country the opportunity to take care of its own affairs. First of all, did you hear this also from other countries? And second, do you think that this new jobs agenda will be able to replace some of the effects of the lost aid?
Well, I think that what probably he would like to say is that countries will primarily need to take care of themselves. That means a more focus on domestic resource mobilization, mobilization of the private sector, the domestic private sector, but I'm sure that they also, Zambia would welcome foreign direct investment. And so I think there is also a changing conversation, if you want. With the development assistance, sometimes there is this notion that one is dependent, if you wish. And I can see that point, that they would like to steer their own destiny. We would very much support that. That doesn't mean, I think, that they would not want last support, for example, of the World Bank Group or so. But it is certainly the form in which we are engaging. I think that's important. I welcome particularly the focus on domestic resource mobilization, because that is still a challenge in many developing countries.
Yeah, and I mean, country ownership was something that we on the other side of the street in my old job also appreciated. But when one thinks about Africa more broadly, the demographics are strong still. There's a lot of potential, but they also are heavily dependent still on the extraction of natural resources. And now we have a race for minerals, rare earths, and the resource curse is still very much alive, if you want. Again, do you think that you can offer with other institutions together a way for countries to overcome that resource dependency?
Well, just to step back, what I think Africa wants, they would like to exploit to the maximum the demographic dividend. And I think that is an absolutely good idea. And also we should be very supportive of this. Having said that, it is clearly that the African countries aspire to put far more value added in their value chains. That can be in manufacturing, it can be in mining, it can be in the agricultural sector. That very often the value added is modest. And that is that a lot of the benefits are actually shipped somewhere else. So they would like to see how we can, you mentioned mining, if you are actually looking that even if in the African countries would only process the first stage of it, the value added addition is enormous. And so those type of things we would like to be supportive of. That can be it in the regulatory, it can be also in the technical assistance, can be also through the World Bank Group, through investments. That can be IFC. We have, of course, within IDA also a private sector window that helps de-risk some of these investments. So I think we need to see how we can use the different instruments to the maximum benefit of African countries, because let's not forget, jobs are created by the private sector. And so if they have that potential, be it in the agriculture sector, be it in light manufacturing, be it in mining, we would like that they have a comprehensive view and actually take advantage of this. And we would be very supportive of that, given that this could be good job creators, as well as boosting economic growth.
Now, one big theme of the meetings was, of course, AI and crypto technologies that are very data intensive, and data centers use a lot of energy. There's a lot of solar energy in Africa and other developing countries. Do you see this also as a potential for investment and secondary jobs creation?
Well, we see that digital and AI are absolutely essential, and we actually created a vice presidency for that. I think we need to keep in mind that these two topics risk, again, increasing the divide, increasing digital divide and increasing AI divide for particularly lower income countries. So I think we need to do everything possible to actually help them to stay on top of these issues. Now, clearly, for digital or AI, you need lots of energy, and you need. We have started an initiative together with the African Development Bank that is called M300 to provide 300 million Africans the access to electricity by 2030. 600 million Africans at this stage do not have access to electricity. So there is a need to really ramp this up, and we are working on that. This was to get first access. And if you want to start a business, or if you want to have your computer or your iPad, you will need electricity. So I think we see this also absolutely as an enabling investment for the private sector, for small and medium-sized enterprises, and that will be clear. I think we need to be very mindful that we don't discriminate against low-income countries, that to say, well, why don't you wait? I think AI will be important. And one of the things is you can have the very sophisticated AI where there is a lot of information. There are also tools of what we call small AI that you provide a small farmer that they may have a simple smartphone. But if they are actually able to see by zeroing on their crops if there is a disease, that they can get that in real time. And so there are many things through simple apps where you could actually provide very effective support, or also, let's say, information support with regard to prices or what happens in markets. So I think we should really see how we can have as consumer-friendly information to farmers, and then hopefully also in as many languages as possible. And I think they are working on that. So we think we need to be here very supportive. We will be clearly also ramping up our investments in this area.
We couldn't let you go without asking about debt, of course. Now, we've seen some small progress in the Global Roundtable, but I think there's also concern out there that maybe countries do have too much multilateral debt. It's so senior, it's hard to restructure. And I think without more multilateral debt, it won't probably be possible to implement the agenda. What's the right balance, you think, of providing that kind of support vis-a-vis private sector?
I think it will be always a difficulty. I think what the call upon is that the debt situation is well embedded in overall macroeconomic policy. We are calling for radical transparency, for the simple good registration, but also to have the data, the debt sustainability analysis based on the most accurate data you have, and then see the impact of this. And in that context, you can look at the composition of that. You can look at the terms of that, for what it is being used. And we believe that is still work in progress because it is not always that transparent. And in that context, you can, of course, then reflect what is the role of multilateral organization? Clearly, we have been very careful with the low-income countries because through our soft loan window IDA, that also includes grants, we are providing concessional financing. So you have, of course, to be careful that to compare $100 of IDA debt that is as a net present value of a fraction of it versus a commercial credit. So we need to look at this, but clearly our call is you need to integrate this. And by the way, it's not only the external debt, but also the domestic public debt, because what we are seeing in quite a few African countries also is that over half of the public debt is now domestic. And so we would welcome a comprehensive debate, but also much better debt management and more transparency.
So we're looking forward to the 2026 annual meetings in Thailand a year from now. What do you hope to have achieved by then, and what do you expect from those meetings?
Well, what we need to do is to fill actually the expectations of our membership. So that is strong support to the implementation of the IDA topics. We would like to have a continued strong support. This is always a challenge to keep donors engaged. I think we have a good value package, but I think this is something you have to work every day on this. I think then on the topics that matters from jobs agenda, but also topics that on private sector development, because we need to see how we can get private investment up, not only in thriving middle-income countries, but also particularly in the low-income countries. So that is a huge agenda to make progress. We cannot do it alone. We have to work across the spectrum, be it the private sector, be it also institutions, IMF. And I think if they see that there is a good and serious effort, then we as an international institute are responding to the calls of the membership to do as much as possible in difficult and also sometimes choppy times to actually navigate this more as successfully as possible for all the countries.
Axel van Trotsenburg, thank you very much for being with us. It's been a pleasure. Good luck
Thank
with
you.
your work.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching us. And there's a ton of programming on the Atlantic Council website covering these 2025 annual meetings that have just concluded. Thank you.